everyone. I'm going to teach a beginner's class in quilting. My name is SandraZ-Fisher, and I have taught many beginner's classes over the years, and I enjoy teaching beginners because I learn from them as well as they learn from me. Anyway, first thing you need is a notepad. It doesn't matter what size or anything, but I keep a notepad handy that I can write things down in. And as you can see, I'm busy writing in it most of the time. I get an idea for a quilt, I write it down. Probably don't do it as often as I should, but. And a pencil or a pen, that's up to you. I've chosen a pencil today. Let's see, I've got a clip here, so I have to move that around so it's out of the way. There. So we need that. You need a rotary cutter. Now, I've had several left-handed quilters join my classes, and it's not their first time quilting or cutting, but they're frustrated because rotary cutters are right-handed. At least that's the way they come from the store. But did you know that if you take this nut off, you set it down, take the little spring out, set it down, take that off, that'll fall out just like that. Good thing I'm doing this. Looks like my rotary cutter needed to be cleaned. Okay, that fell out this side, right? Now what we're going to do, turn this over, put the blade in, put this back on, put this back on, put your nut back on, and you've got a left-handed rotary cutter. Now you can do this with, I think, just about every rotary cutter. So you don't have to be trying to cut right-handed. Just switch that blade around. And for those of you teaching left-handed people, do the mirror image with them. Have them across the table from you to learn. It's the easiest. Now I got to put my blade back the other way because I'm not left-handed and I'm not ambidextrous, so. And to always remember how I took my blade apart, I lay everything down as I took it out. That way when I pick it up, it goes on the same way. Now, in my classes, I've seen a lot of students, especially with this type of cutter. This red knob is a safety knob. When you push that, you can't press this handle, so therefore your blade can't come out. And if you've got small children around, husbands around, wives, you don't want them playing with your blade and getting cut, because this is like a razor blade. It is very, very sharp. But I've seen a lot in my classes do this. They open it up, they pop that, and it locks open. And then they set their cutter down, and they're busy over here, and they go to grab for it. Guess what? You could get cut very, very badly. Don't ever do that. It's handy, I know. Learn to press that blade. And I like these because they automatically shut close, put the blade back out of the way, so that if you are busy, you go to grab it, you're not grabbing that blade. Safety first. Always, always, always safety first. And I always tell the ladies and gentlemen in my classes that if I catch them laying their blade down while it's still open, I have a jar and they've got to deposit 25 cents towards the last class's pizza. So they get very careful on making sure they don't contribute too much to the last class's pizza. So far, we've never had a pizza. I wonder how that works. Anyway, the next thing that I like, it doesn't matter brand, but I like a 24 by 6 inch. Now if you haven't bought your rulers yet, buy a 24 by 8.5. It's just a little bigger, as you can see, same length, but it's a little deeper and you can do more things with it. Now when you're cutting 2.5 inch strips, this 1/2 inch on this side is wonderful. Doesn't mean you can't do it on this too, but if you have the choice, go with the 8.5 inch wide. And the other ruler that I really like is a 6.5 inch square. And again, it does not matter the brand. You choose one that works for you. What works for me does not necessarily work for everyone. But these are the two rulers. If you have not bought any rulers yet, get these. Now I have a 36 by 24 inch mat here. It fits my table, and this is the size I like to work on. I had a great big cutting table and I could put the great big mats across, but they're expensive. These mats are usually over $100. This is one that I was talking about in a previous video that I found at Princess Auto. Again, Princess Auto is not paying me to advertise for them, but it's a crafting mat and it's in metric. It's not in imperial. So those that like to use the mat to measure their fabric, it's not going to work very well for you unless you transpose your pattern into metric. And your rulers are all in imperial, most of them. I don't know if I've ever seen a metric ruler. But anyway, I'm trying to think of everything to tell you before we get going here. As many things as you can. Oh, you shouldn't use your mat to do your measuring for your fabric. The reason is your mat can warp or stretch over time. And you never ever want to leave your mat in the sunshine. It will warp big time. And you can't do anything to put it back. Once it's got the big bubble in it from the heat, yeah, it just doesn't go back. I've tried layering the big encyclopedias on them and to try and push it back down, and no, it just doesn't go back. All you can do is maybe cut the mat so you can use a portion of it or whatever. Anyway, as a beginner, you don't need a mat this big. All you need is, I would say, an 18 or 20 inch by 24 would work just fine. And this isn't quite the 24. But half this size would work fine. You can work with that. Okay? Those are the main things. Oh, and you need fabric. Now, when you go to the store to buy your fabric, choose a fabric that you like. Don't choose a fabric that your friend likes. You need something that you like. Oh, I've got lots of fabric here. Let's see. I am going to pull something out. This one's great. It's busy. It's a Northcott fabric. And it's got lots of colors. It's beautiful. Okay, maybe it's not the best. Maybe it's not your choice. Maybe you like flowers. That's fine. But find one fabric that talks to you. It has to appeal to you. It's when you walk up and down the fabric aisles, it jumps out and says, take me home with you. That's the fabric you want, because that's the one you like. Okay, then to buy your coordinating fabrics, on the selvage, most companies put a color chart. Now these are all the colors. I hope you can see that. Those are all the colors that are in this fabric. So pull out another fabric and match it up. And don't pull out plain fabrics. There, that'll work. That looks like it'll work. This fabric is old enough that it does not have the color on it that I can find on the selvage edge. No, it doesn't. So I'm just looking at it and saying, yeah, it'll work. That orange is in here, right here. It'll work. Get different patterns. Different colors, different patterns. Here's a blue, flowery. Yeah, it's in there. There it is. There's a purple. Is it in here? Yep, it is. Right in there. And that's how you do it. Buy different sizes of patterns to make your quilt interesting. Different colors. And you can buy plain fabric. Just plain, a plain color. Like this is all made out of plain. The design in this is the check. It's the grid work. So, and buy what you like. You're not making it for Auntie Sue or Grandma Joe. You're making it for you. Your first quilt is the quilt you should keep, so that you've got a measuring stick. It may be the only quilt you ever make in your life, and if it is, you want to keep that. It's a keepsake. And if you make more quilts, you can look at that beginning quilt and look at the quilts you just made in the past, recently, and you've got a timeline of how you've improved, where you started and where you are now. Now, there are people out there that are master quilters. I've seen their work. It is awesome. I'm not aspiring to be a master quilter. I enjoy the process of quilting. I enjoy teaching the quilting. Therefore, it doesn't matter if it's an award-winning quilt for me. Some of the quilts I've quilted have won awards. I am happy for their owners and proud of my work, that the part I had in the quilting part of it. Other than that, I like seeing the pictures, and I like hearing people comment about the winning quilts, and I'm happy for them. Anyway, I want to show you how to get started in your cutting. Now you can buy yardage, and it depends on the size of a quilt that you're making. And the quilt I'm going to show you how to make, we're going to work with 5-inch blocks. And I'm going to work with Scrappy fabrics. You want it as a pattern, then we'll work in a 9 patch. So choose a center that's going to be the same on all your blocks, and choose 8 other fabrics. You can make this out of fat quarters, you can make it scrappy if you want, and if you want to keep it with a cohesive center block, that's fine. You don't have to. Mine's going to be totally scrappy, but I'll show you how to do the 9 blocks and then set it together. And I'm making a small one. Probably, oh, I'd say crib size, something like that. Your fabric, I will figure out how much you need and I will put it in the description below so that you can be prepared for your next class. Part 2 of this class, not your next class. Yeah. When we start to quilt, we need to press our fabric. And it's a good habit to get into the idea of pressing. I'll show you the difference between ironing and pressing. Just straightening some of this out, matching up the selvage edges. And I like to hit it with a little bit of starch. I use Best Press. They are not paying me or anything to. I've just found it doesn't leave any residue on my fabric, and I like my fabric to be quite stiff. So if you do pre-wash your fabrics before using them, use some starch to or sizing to put some of that stiffness back into your fabric. Now when you're ironing, you're going back and forth in large sweeping movements. That's great on pillowcases and sheets. But when you come to quilting, it's best to learn to press. That's lifting your iron up and setting it down, and letting the heat do the work. It's not so important on yardage like this to press, but it's a good idea to get in the habit. Learn it here, and then you'll carry it to your seams. And I'm going to spray it again with starch. This helps to keep your fabric from stretching when you're working and sewing with it when you're cutting. And any of those wrinkles that don't want to come out, the starch really helps to get those out. If you've pre-washed your fabric, do the starch on each side 2 or 3 times at least. And the time to pre-wash is, if you're going to be pre-washing everything that's going into the quilt, then pre-wash everything. You don't have to pre-wash the batting, but the batting usually has a small percentage of shrinkage, which is indicated on the packaging. And if you're buying it off the bolt, then ask the store that you're buying it from. what the shrinkage is, because they will have that information on hand. Now, because I didn't pre-wash this piece, I am not going to put more starch into it. Now, because you're all anxious to get cutting, I want to show you how to cut. Okay, this is, I can feel the difference. This is the part that I pressed and starched, and I'll put that in so that you can see it. Now we have to square this up. I like to keep the fold of the fabric with me. It's like I bend this way, my fabric is bending that way. It stops me from having the cuts where they end up on an angle and you end up with a bunch of V-cuts. When you have your first V-cuts, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So now we have to line this up and square it up. And the old adage is measure twice, cut once. And that is very true. You want to measure twice, cut once. Now what I'm doing here is I can see that I have to go take that much off when I flip it up and look at the bottom. Okay, so I'm lining up on the 1 inch mark here. Now when you're cutting, you're going to spider this hand up. For you lefties, you're going to spider this hand up. Don't ever get your rotary cutter beyond your hand. This is the pressure on the ruler. It's going to hold it in place. So put your hand down. Make sure it's holding it. Take your rotary cutter straight up and down and cut. Okay? I cut to the end of that finger. Move my hand up. Spider up. Spider up. Okay? Very easy to do. Now I am going to flip my fabric over. Normally I would just walk around my table. I'd have this way, and I would have trimmed from the other direction to save me from moving my fabric. Now because I'm cutting 5-inch blocks, I'm going to cut a 5-inch strip the width of the fabric. This is the width of the fabric. This is the length of the fabric. Okay, the length comes off the bolt, and they cut it into whatever size you want. 1 meter, 2 meters, 1 yard, 2 yards, whatever. The width is usually 45 inches, usually. It can vary. Some companies put out 44-inch fabric. So now what I'm looking at is I want to make sure that I have this corner in the corner of my fabric. This is straight along the bottom, and this is straight along the side. And we'll take out the fabric. Now I'm sitting down so you can see me talking. I normally stand to cut. Okay, so we have this strip cut. Now we're going to take off the selvage. You don't want that selvage in your quilts. I know it's printed to the edge, but it's usually about a 1/2 inch, and so it's 1 inch you're going to lose. Big deal. You don't want that selvage in there because it's woven tighter than the rest of your material. Okay, because that's where they load it onto the machines to weave it. So they have a very good strong edge on that. It's hard to teach quilting when I don't have an audience in the room with me, students, because they ask questions, and yeah, I get sidetracked real easy with their questions. They remind me of things that I got to tell you, so bear with me if I do a lot of and what am I trying to tell you. Okay, now I'm going to cut a 5-inch block, so I'm lining it up along one line, the 5-inch line, and along the 1-inch line. This is the 6-inch line here. Okay, sits inside, and then I cut, and that's the way you carry on until you have your fabrics all cut. And next week we will start sewing it together. So get all your cutting done, have fun shopping, and remember, choose what you like, not what someone else likes, unless the quilt is for them. If the quilt is for them, okay, fine, but if this is your very first quilt, choose what you like. Happy quilting, stay real, have a wonderful week, and thank you for joining me. Remember to subscribe, ring the bell, and share this with your friends on social media. And I hope to see you next week. Bye for now.